This gang of roustabouts are cutting up cinema like it's never been cut up before. There's gonna be reviews, there's gonna be interviews, there's gonna be hijinks, and there's gonna be a whole lot of cutting in this room. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast, coming at you 128 kilobytes per second.
Welcome to another mini episode of the Cutting Room Movie Podcast. I am your humble host, Tom Detloff, and tonight I am joined by Mr. Max Cook and our steady man, Dave Pace, is here tonight. He said Dave is just on every single episode now. It's amazing. Dave, how you doing, dude?
I'm a whore, Tom.
Yeah. Do you have any more time for Fangoria magazine, or are you just all Cutting Room Movie
Question
Podcast?
is, they have any more time?
Yeah, right. How you doing, Max?
Listen, Tom, we've talked to a lot of people on this show. I think Michael Berryman was probably the most exciting person for me, but that's over now. Because Pat Healy, as I said earlier, I really want to eat this dude's balls. I'm all man, but I love Pat. I've loved him since I saw him in Ghost World as John Ellis. That's a very sincere fucking soul movie for me, man.
Hold on, Max.
Well, no. What do you mean?
No, hold on. Listen.
Why can't I kiss his ass for a minute?
Well, you can, and you will, and we're going to have plenty of time for that. But you mentioned Ghost World. I'm going to go back 2 years before that in a film called Magnolia, where he was absolutely incredible. He was in an amazing scene with Julianne Moore. And this is what I really want to talk to Pat Healy about, is that scene. Because it's one of the most intense scenes in Paul Thomas Anderson's directorial career. So you could.
Is there anyone on this show who does not beat off to Paul Thomas Anderson? My God, I have a headache.
Hold on a sec. I'm doing it right now.
Oh, it's Pat Healy.
Oh, hi guys.
Hey, Pat.
My ears were burning.
What's going on, dude?
How are you? Did I jump in too quickly?
No, it's fine. It's fine, man. It's all good. It's great to have you here. Hey, listen, Pat, tonight we are doing a little special show on your new movie, Compliance, which is so interesting. And we're going to talk to you about that. We're going to talk to you about so many other things. But first, I just want to give you a great big welcome to our show, man. Thanks for coming on tonight.
Thanks for having me. It's nice to be lumped in with Michael Berryman, who I also have admired since I was a small kid and was like, who is that bald, drooling vegetable in the wheelchair in Cuckoo's Nest? Onto Hills Have Eyes and
Yes.
the famous Motley Crue Smoking in the Boys Room video.
Yeah, dude.
Pat,
I think Pat's being sincere.
Absolutely. Obviously, because he knows the man's career. But Pat, you're missing the big one to me because, I'm an HBO subscriber. And the other night on the HBO Comedy Channel at 2:00 in the morning, and Max, you know how I like to fall asleep to watching a film. Fucking Weird Science.
Oh, yeah.
And that scene he's in with
Vernon Wells.
Vernon Wells, yeah, from
Yeah.
from Commando and
from the
Road Warrior.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely hilarious.
Fantastic.
Yeah, but yeah, Berryman was a real treat to talk to, Pat.
He has that great line with what does he say? I'm sorry you have a lovely home or something like that.
Yeah. Well, yeah, he had to leave kind of abruptly because he's got to go. He's got to get up early and teach in the morning, I believe.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, it's great to hear that you're a Berryman admirer. Are you a fan of horror in general, Pat?
Yeah, I'm a hardcore cinephile since I was a kid. My parents love movies, and my brother. I have three brothers, but my older brother Jim and I just became total freaks, mole men as kids, and just watched as many movies as possible and read about them on television. Went to the movies. He's worked for various film festivals. He now programs the University of Wisconsin Cinematheque and is a programmer for the Wisconsin Film Festival. And I'm making him. We're both kind of doing what we wanted to do when we were little kids. He
awesome.
Shows them, watches them, and I make them. And I don't get to watch nearly as many as he does, but I'm I'm all about movies and actors in particular, since that's been, my chosen profession for the most part.
So you were a big, I mean, you probably grew up in the 80s like most of us did. I mean, going to the video store, renting the VHSs. I mean, this was a big part of your life.
Yeah, I'm a little older, so part of the '70s, and I remember when the first VCRs came out. There were the Betamaxes, and my aunt had Halloween, John Carpenter's Halloween, and that was probably 1979 or 1980. And we didn't get one until 1985. I graduated from junior high school, and I got as a gift. And that summer, I mean, we had been really like seen a lot up to that point. We had something in the suburbs of Chicago where I grew up called On TV, which was, we didn't have cable in our town. So yet, so the On TV was like, I don't know if you know about Z Channel in LA, but it
Yeah,
was
of
like,
course.
there's a little box on the TV. I had an on and off switch, and they played movies not 24 hours a day, but most of the day. So you saw like, same stuff you would see on HBO recent releases now, but also older stuff. And I saw a lot of stuff that way, and I was really fortunate that way. But yeah, in '85 we got the VCR, and then I was like really discovering. That was really the time when I saw Scorsese and Kubrick and all of those things that I had only sort of read about in
Mhm.
books. Danny Peary's cult movies book was his books were really important to my brother and I, and we always sought those movies out. So I have a kind of a tendency to like those films, and also I seem to be building a career now as an actor in those kinds of films, which is interesting because they're the kind of films I tend to gravitate towards as a viewer.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I really find your whole library of films as an actor quite diverse. But it's odd to me that you say you didn't have cable growing up, so you were kind of like your family was like kind of like the Keaton family of Family Ties.
We had it, we got On TV, I think, when I was 8 or 9, and then we had cable. Uh, I would say when I was 11. So I'm talking about like I started really early. I was seeing movies at a way too early an age. Like I talked about
Mm.
Cuckoo's Nest, I probably saw that movie when I was 5 or 6 years old, which is just totally inappropriate.
Yeah, well, it seems that that would be the case. I mean, especially in our society today. But I mean, these are films I was subjected to at a very early age, man. I mean, I was watching Evil Dead and
Right.
Romero's, Dead movies in the early '80s, and I was born in 1973. So, like, I mean, I was watching all these films eight. Nine, I went to see Reanimator in the movie theater.
Right. So
And I was
we're
like 11 or 12 years old doing that.
yeah, we're around the same age, and I worked in the theater when I was in high school, when RoboCop was out and all those kinds
Oh,
of
I
things.
love
But
RoboCop.
I had
Oh
already
my god.
seen all that. I
Paul
mean,
Verhoeven, dude.
yeah, the best, right?
Yeah, definitely. But
Uh,
Pat, you got started. I mean, in comedy, didn't you? I mean, you were in like a comedy troupe to start out. I mean,
no, not really. What happened was I started in doing plays as a kid in school, and then I went to I did it through high school, and then I went to college for theater at a place called Illinois State University, which is in a town called Normal, Illinois, if you could believe that, and out in the cornfields. And Illinois State was a great theater school, but they were known primarily for launching Steppenwolf Theater Company, that the sort of members of Step.
Gary Sinise and John Malkovich.
Exactly.
Right.
Sinise, Malkovich, Joan Allen, John Mahoney, all these people. So
Right.
they offered an internship for someone every year who graduated. And I got that internship at Steppenwolf for a year. So I worked there as an intern and, stage crew and stuff like that. But I was allowed to audition for all the shows. So I ended up getting cast as an understudy in a few plays. And I knew what I always wanted to do was movies, but it really broke me into the business in a big way because it was, this nationally, internationally known theater company with these really famous people. So I was an understudy. I ended up going on as an understudy, and then after my year was up, uh, I got cast in my first show there, which was actually, oddly enough, a stage production of A Clockwork Orange that Anthony Burgess had written and Terry Kinney directed. So, and that I met a lot of my friends. Nick Offerman was in that play, and Paul Edelstein, and a lot of these guys that are still my friends now, or actors now. Chris Bauer, who's on True Blood, and we and I from there I was able to get an agent, and I never did comedy until I was in LA. I did, I loved comedy as a kid, and I did, sketch stuff in college and things like that. But funnily enough, being from Chicago, where that improv and sketch and comedy is huge, Second City and everything, I never did it there, and I never did it till I was out here. Oddly enough, with all these people from Chicago who I didn't meet until I got out here. Matt Walsh, who started UCB, and Jay Johnston and Eric Hoffman. Those guys, I started doing stuff with them, and then did stuff with Brendan Small, who does Metalocalypse and did home movies now, and then went on to have my own group with a bunch of guys for a while, and did sketch and stand up for a few years. But ultimately, it's not, it's something that's a hobby for me and something that I enjoy doing.
Gotcha.
I actually hosted a sketch show a few weeks ago, and I had a blast, and I missed doing that a lot. But wanting to make films, and I've made some shorts and things, and I have a career as a screenwriter, so I really want to focus on making films, and it takes up a lot of time. So comedy sort of has to be a hobby, but I do love it.
Well, first of all, it's obvious. I mean, especially in like two of your more recent starring roles in The Innkeepers, you're very funny at times. I mean, as dark and disturbing as that film is, and particularly in Compliance, I mean, which is a very, very difficult role, probably one of the most difficult roles you've ever had to do, I'm sure.
Definitely the most. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
sure.
but even in that darkness, Pat, you have this ability to be funny. I mean, are you aware of that?
Yeah, I mean, I would be disingenuous to say that I wasn't aware of that. I'm a naturally funny person. I'm not a shtick guy. I don't particularly. I mean, I can find that funny if someone does it right, but I like, I love Albert Brooks, and I love Woody Allen, and I love people who have a dry, natural, delivery to things.
Right. Pat, I love the fact that you say Albert Brooks before Woody Allen.
Oh, well, he's...
you know what I'm saying, man?
One has a greater body of work.
Right.
Body of work, but, those films that he made...
Well, one is funnier than the other, to be honest with you.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just... It's a particular brand. I mean, I could watch Modern Romance one day and laugh my ass off, and then watch it the next day and have it not be funny at all, just be sad. Yeah. And still, it's a great film. You know what I mean?
Right.
As a filmmaker, right. Great.
I love Modern Romance. I mean, Pat, I literally every 3 or 4 months visit the editing scene. With Hulk screams.
Yeah.
I mean, it's one of my favorite films in cinematic history.
Space Floor. Good one.
Maybe it's Space Floor.
Yeah. Good one. Yeah, I mean, to sort of dovetail on that into what you were talking about, that's not acting is acting, and to me, you have a script, the lines are funny. If you play the reality of the scene, for example, there's that scene in Innkeepers where I'm professing, I'm trying to tell her that I love her, my unrequited love, and I played that scene. I was very heartbroken, I mean, I'm very heartbroken in the way that I play it. That's how I felt when I was doing it. I sat with the audience on opening night at South by Southwest when it premiered, and everyone's roaring with laughter, and I thought it was funny too. And I was like, it's funny. I don't approach it that way. I think that's why it's funny, because it's real. That to me is what's funny. I mean, look, I love a good, fart joke and somebody get kicked in the balls. Any of that stuff can be funny. Pie in the face can be funny. Everything's funny within context. But for me personally, that approach doesn't work. It doesn't serve me well,
Right. I think what you have personally from watching your stuff, is an amazing talent to get something from the other actor in your scene, which is probably, really one of the best compliments an actor could get, honestly, is that
Well,
you have the hold on, you have this great ability to do that. And when I watched you in Magnolia, in that scene with Julianne Moore in the pharmacy,
right.
think about her performance reacting to what you're saying. Okay, this is one of the best acted scenes I have ever watched in film history. Now I say this, I'm a big PTA fan and whatever. I love Magnolia. Two things I want you to talk to me about. One, how that role gravitated towards you, because it really is an important role if you think about it. And secondly, what was it like spending a day or two with Paul Thomas Anderson and Julianne Moore?
Well, I mean, obviously it's the stuff of legend at this point in my career, and
Brilliant.
it was I had moved out to LA in early '98. I was a huge fan. I'd seen his first two films in the theater, but I was a huge fan, as were a lot of people, of Boogie Nights. Like I probably saw that, 3 or 4 times in the theater. So I'd been out here not quite a year, and I was they asked, they had announced it in the trades that he was making another film, and that Tom Cruise was going to be in it. So that's really all I knew. And my agents at the time, who were my agents from Chicago, they had an office out in LA, so I was able to come out here. Said, "Would you like to go in on this?" And I was like, "Of course." I canceled the trip to New York to visit my brother, just to go. And it was just with the casting director, Cassandra Koulakundis, who also cast Ghost World as well, and still does all of Paul's movies. But I showed up at this office I guess in Burbank or North Hollywood, and she and I just hit it off. I ended up like, sometimes you have these auditions that, like, most of them are really painful, but we ended up just talking for a long time, like maybe like an hour even, and not even reading the scene. You said that thing before about being listening and interested in what the other person's saying. I mean, I generally am interested, and it's easier to be interested in someone when they're interested in you too, So we're sitting and we're talking for like an hour, and then she sort of like nonchalantly asked me if I wanted to read the scene. I was like, sure, but I noticed that she didn't turn the camera on or anything, and I read the scene with her, and then she said, "Hold on a second," and she left, and she walked in with Paul, and I was just, totally floored.
Right. And he looks like he's 18 years old probably at that point.
I guess he's a year older than I am.
But he's very young looking.
I look at that movie and I go, boy, I didn't know anything. I was 27 years old, and then I go like,
Yeah.
oh my God, he was 28 years
It's
old
amazing.
I didn't know shit till I was like 33 at least, you know?
Yeah, he said about that movie, I believe, that he knew he was going to make other movies in the future, but he never thought that he goes, "I'll never make a better movie than Magnolia."
He has, yeah, and you can see him say that, I think, on the documentary too, that's on the disc, and it was just like every feeling he could have about everything put into this movie, and it was, at that point, just the scene. So he showed up, and we just like really got along. Like, he is one of the few film directors who is a true cinephile too. So, there's like Paul and Curtis Hanson and Alexander Payne and
Yes.
Tarantino, of course. These guys that really are hardcore cinephiles. You'd be surprised how many directors aren't. And so we talked about movies and all these things, and we listened to the same commentaries on Laserdisc and all that stuff. And then I read the scene for him for a couple times, and then he said, "Okay, do you want to come do this movie? And it's going to be fun. It'll be you and Julianne Moore." And I'm like, "Yeah, of course."
Jesus, man.
Entire life, I was offered something in the room, and what was really great about that experience is he was very inclusive of everyone in the movie. He knows that to involve all of the, entire cast, no matter how big or small your part, just makes his film better. So we had a rehearsal day. The film was shot in segments to accommodate all of the main actors' schedules because, Julianne went off to go do End of the Affair, I think, and Tom Cruise was doing whatever he was doing at that time. So, the big actors rarely overlapped in the film, except when they did in the scene. So my day, my rehearsal day, which was like a 12-hour day sitting at a table, was myself, Julianne Moore, Phil Hoffman, Michael Murphy, Don McManus, and a woman I can't remember her name who played her psychiatrist. And it was just remarkable. I mean, Phil was and probably still is my favorite movie actor, that's working now. And
he's an amazing talent.
And he's, remained a friend since then. And I just immediately felt at ease and felt like I wasn't like a guy who was showing up, to work one day. I was just everyone just treated me the same. And so when we went up to shoot, this was in January. It was the first week of shooting, and it was just a blast. I mean, it was, first of all, she's like couldn't be a nicer person. Second of all, she's one of the most beautiful women you will ever see in person. She how like they have that like cheesy thing like with women in movies, like with
Pat, do you like redheads?
I do. I mean, I like all.
Got a thing for redheads, Pat.
But she like looked like a woman who like had a diffusion filter on her, like in person. I mean, she was just beautiful, and so she's just very nice. And we just did the scene, and they did her coverage first, and really, I mean, I think I'm remembering correctly. I think she only did it 2, maybe 3 times. I mean, she was just remarkable. And then, I mean, this is like a really cool thing. Like, she stayed the entire day to sit there, even when she didn't even have any lines, when I'm just over sort of in the corner looking over at her. She stayed there so that I could sit, and look at her. She didn't have to do that. A lot of actors won't.
Wow.
And it's just sort of the environment that Paul fosters. His script is important, but so is his entire crew, and so especially are the actors, and it's why the quality of work, I think, remains impeccably high. He understands that, he is a genius, but he's not, alone, and he enlists the help of just amazingly talented people, and he continues to do nice things for me. I always get an invite to a screening.
Oh, wow.
Private screening, before the movie comes out, sometimes months before. I ever since then. And we email occasionally, and I will see him occasionally. But it was an incredible experience, much like Steppenwolf was, where I walked into Steppenwolf, and here's John Malkovich, and here's Steve Martin, and here are all these people that are here working, and they're nice, and on the one hand, it was really good for me because it took all of the sort of mystery, and I didn't feel cowed by any of it. But on the other hand, I kind of got spoiled early on because the intervening years weren't as easy, and I didn't become a star, overnight, and I'm not, really still, but continue to work. But like those really early experiences were so great, informative for me. And then it was a long shoot. It was like a 5-month shoot, and about halfway through, they had a halfway through party. Did a group photo on the game show set.
Wow.
But the Kids Know set, which is out there somewhere. I don't think I have ever seen it, but where it's like everybody in the cast and crew that was around is.
I'll tell you, it's a long shoot, but Tom Cruise, who was in the movie, just went through 6 years dealing with Stanley Kubrick and with Eyes Wide Shut. So, I can only imagine how long that was.
Yeah, and he was only, everybody was only, those people were really only on the film for weeks, but. So it was like halfway through the shoot, we did that picture. They had a party, and Paul said, I think I got something else for you. And I thought he was offering me another movie. And I got all excited, of course. But I was still excited when I found out he offered me another role.
Oh, yeah, right.
He had all these sort of connections worked out in the film. And so I play this pharmacist at the beginning of the film. Who in Greenberry Hill, London, who's murdered by 3 guys named Greenberry and Hill, and we shot that on the Universal lot where they shot all the old horror movies. So it's like the old Frankenstein village and everything.
Very cool.
Oh, cool.
Hey, dude, let's
Oh my God.
move off of PTA, and I'm going to ask you one more question, and I'm going to cut you loose to my co-host because I know that they have a few things, especially Max because he's such a big fan. I'm not letting you get out of here, Pat, without giving me a Werner Herzog story.
Well, I have one that comes to mind, which was when we were shooting like like in the jungles in Thailand, and
Well, Pat was in Rescue Dawn, just so our listeners know. But go ahead, Pat.
we were in Thailand, and there was the script, and in the script, when they rescued Dieter Christian Bale, they gave him a Snickers bar, and that's what it said in the script. And one day, Toby Huss and myself, one of the other actors, were sitting, and we were watching Werner vehemently argue with the AD. Not Snickers, Butterfinger. I implored them, Butterfinger. Then, of course, like the next day, we found out his very sound reasoning, which was Snickers would melt in the jungle, but the Butterfinger, the core, would remain intact, so they wouldn't have given him a Snickers.
Max Herzog.
Unbelievable.
Hey, Pat, I'm going to cut you loose to my co-host. They want to ask you a couple of questions. We're talking with Pat Healy, the star of The Innkeepers and the film that we are reviewing tonight, Compliance. Max Cook, Mr. Pat Healy.
Well, Pat, you and I have a lot in common, I think. I grew up on the whole Z Channel thing. My mom was a nurse, and she sat me down when I was 10 and showed me Midnight Cowboy, and I didn't think it was very appropriate. And we both know I grew up with a dude named Andy Rothenberg.
Oh, yeah, I know Andy from Chicago, sure.
Yeah, I told him I was talking to you tonight, and he says hello. But I got to tell you, man, there's something about, and I really want to talk about Ghost World, but there's a very big frustration when I talk to people about The Innkeepers because I'm a big horror guy, and everyone's always saying to me, hey, man, you know, what do you got for me? What's good? What should I take a look at? And I always suggest The Innkeepers. And I'm going to be honest with you. With my people who don't really understand horror, they come back at me and they're like, why the fuck did you recommend that? Nothing happens. And I said, what do you mean nothing happens? And they said, well, what? It's just two people in a hotel and nothing really happens. There's no real scares. I said, is that what you're in it for? Because for me, and I have seen that film a few too many times, that film for me is about the relationship between you and Claire. And that is one of the most beautiful relationships I think I've ever seen in any movie made past like the 90s. So do you ever get that where people are like, I'm not scared enough, it's not riveting enough, and they don't realize that the film is really about this very special relationship between you two guys?
Oh, yeah, that's all I get. I was with my parents over the weekend, and they were saying, God, you must be, you know, must get a lot of crap for Compliance or whatever. I said, you know, amazingly enough, not nearly as much as I get for The Innkeepers. And they said, really? Why? And I go, you know, I guess if I was going to be reductive about it, I would just say that horror now means constant jump scares, loud noises, and gore, which is not what The Innkeepers is. The Innkeepers is a, you know, Ty will hate me for saying this again, but people always say, you know, it's a slow burn movie, and it's about getting to know these people so that you actually care. The scares come organically from caring about those people, knowing what that space is and being in it and being there with it. And if you're not looking for that, it seems like a lot of people like us, we grew up watching movies. We sort of like that was our school. And so we know how to watch movies. And I don't mean to be arrogant, but there is a way to a proper way to watch films. And if you watch, you know, a certain director's film, then you sort of train your mind to know how to watch their other films and so on and so forth. And the same thing goes for genres, and a film establishes its tone, you know, in the opening. So if you can't get with that, it's fine. If you don't like it, it's not your taste, it's fine. But yeah, I do find it strange because I feel like that movie at its worst is maybe just kind of a pleasant experience, of hanging out with these people. But people really go after it. And it's been puzzling to me because it unfortunately didn't get a huge theatrical release. And the whole kind of year that we did screenings at festivals, every audience I was in was packed, and they were just so vocal. They were screaming, they're laughing all the time. And I think robbed of that experience of seeing in the theater, it takes away something from people. And I wish more people had had a chance to see it that way. They may have felt the same way. And like I said, to each his own, but it is kind of puzzling and troubling for me because it's kind of like the least offensive movie, but people get so angry about it. I know what you mean. I had someone told me to kill myself on Twitter because of it.
Ah,
Are you serious?
Yeah, well,
Yeah,
yeah.
It's so bizarre. It's such a nice movie.
No, I mean, like, I mean, okay, sorry, I'm gonna break in for a second here because that's the kind of thing, Pat. I write for Fangoria.
Yeah, I love Fangoria. I have since I was a kid.
Yeah, so do I. and since I was a kid as well, it's kind of a neat experience to be with them now.
I've been
But-
such to do those interviews for Fangoria.
Yeah, it's crazy though because you're talking about fans, telling you to kill yourself because of innkeepers, and there's a weird strain of orthodoxy in horror right now.
Yeah.
And it's really weird. We get a lot of shit for the movies that we like. Like we'll recommend a movie, we'll give a movie a positive review that doesn't fit into that orthodoxy, and we get a lot of hell from people about it.
I know, and it's strange because it's sort of like there's a new cinephilia that is not based on film history. I mean, that the films that they're kind of basing their opinions on are from a fairly recent history, and I don't think that bodes well for the future of that genre. I mean, it'll always do well in theaters because it's a group experience to see a horror film and scream with people and everything. But things like Compliance, which you guys have done, Fangoria has done stuff on. There's an argument that's a horror film too.
yeah, it is.
And we've taken a lot of shit for that, by the way.
Yeah, we used to, Pat. We used to. It is. Yeah, we used to be on this podcast. Used to belong to a horror network, and we used to just strictly review horror movies. And we would always challenge the genre and just try to bring in films that we felt were horrifying, like say Deliverance. I mean, Max will tell you. I mean, this is one of our biggest controversies, where people felt that Deliverance was not a horror movie.
Well, why can't it be? I mean, it's a survival movie. It's an action adventure movie. It's a drama. It's a horror movie. I mean, what aren't many of the best movies, cross genres? I mean, you call 2001 a science fiction film. It certainly is, but I mean, isn't it so much more than that? I mean, isn't it just sort of everything, and
It's a great point.
Star Wars is a Western, and Terms of Endearment is a drama and a comedy and many other things. So
we once had the balls to say that Ordinary People was a horror movie. It's true.
Tyler Moore.
Hey, listen, I gotta say something. The Innkeepers, to me, and I've seen it so many times, and it's one of those that I'm always recommending to people. It is a theme that I love in film, and that is two misfits find each other in a world of shit. And if you don't feel anything for these people, then the end, the climactic terrors that you're expecting, when they come, it's so much more powerful because you have invested so much love. I did. I mean, when I reviewed this film, remember, Tom, we talked about The Innkeepers, and I started fucking crying.
Yeah, but Max, you also cried during a Jackass review.
All right, take it easy. But the point is, what's happening here between Healy and Paxton is a real relationship that you never get to experience in film. There are misfits. There's kind of a sexual tension. There's sort of a weirdness there. I mean, at one point, the dude answers his hotel room door in little white undies, and she's all at once repulsed, but she cares about him. I think they do, and it's like we never get to see their potential because the darkness takes over and ends whatever could have happened between them. Because seriously, as adorable as she is, and listen, Pat, you have amazing Morrissey hair. I just think that those two represent one of the best relationships I've seen in modern movies. I just it can't be topped.
Oh, thanks. I mean, we had a genuine. It's funny because we only met the day before we started shooting, I think, and we just had that genuine thing. And we're both, professional actors. She's been doing it almost as long as I have since she was a little kid, even though I'm older than her. So we both came into it very prepared. And, like I said, my job was not to make it funny or scary, but just to find what the arc of that character was, which was he was this guy that was in love with this girl and he couldn't tell her until it was too late. So I'm approaching it from a level of a tragic love story. I mean, I'm not trying to be pretentious. That's just how I viewed it and how I played it. So I'm very pleased to hear that you got that out of it. And I'm not surprised to hear that you got that out of it by watching it multiple times, which is just, that is a lost art. Films are meant to be viewed multiple times. And we live now in a time when it's just McDonald's and you see it and you're like, I didn't like it, or you're like, it or whatever, and it goes away. And it's like a film like that is so detailed, and Ty put so much work into the detail of the shooting of it, and in his post-production even more detail. So I don't think it's fair to just sort of see it and just kind of toss it away like that. But I'm biased, obviously, and I think it's a great relationship too. And I've heard people say they like the relationship, but not the ending. It's like, I don't know. I think I should just not read press anymore. But I like.
Listen to me. All of these extraordinary women. I don't know if you like dudes or chicks or what, but I watch you in these movies, Pat. Thora Birch, Scarlett Johansson, Sarah Paxton, Kelly McGillis, Dreama Walker, even over the phone. You must be busting nuts all over the place. How do you handle it?
Well, I mean, it's very weird.
Yeah, I mean, Pat, I'm surprised you haven't asked us to strip and search each other yet.
Oh no, Scarlett. I did.
Yes, sir.
I met Scarlett when she was 11 years old. So, and then we did Ghost World. She was 15. So it just wasn't like.
Oh, God, I hope not.
What the hell was it like working with Terry Zwigoff? Come on, man. I'm a crumb fiend. I'm a fucked up cartoonist. I mean, this movie reached into my soul, and every time you come on, this is another film I've seen 87 times. You fucking kill me. You're a nihilist. You're providing these weird tapes to Enid. I mean, what the hell? What was your experience on this set?
Well, I was a huge fan of Dan Clowes and his comics, and in particular that one. Dan was living in Chicago at the time when he wrote that, so I actually knew. If I didn't know that exact guy that he based that on, I knew, roughly who that type was. We sort of, lived in those same circles. So that was another one where I walked in and they kind of gave it to me right there, and I just like worship both of those guys, and that.
Yeah.
Really, really fun. And it's funny because I did that and Pearl Harbor simultaneously. So I was like flying to Hawaii and having Michael Bay yell at me, and then
yeah, that must be great.
It actually is great. I mean, I did another movie with Bay too. So which was
you've done 2 films with Bay?
Did, but I was cut out. But
what's the other one?
The Island, which was also with Scarlett. So that was, I worked with her too on that. So Dreama Walker is a wonderful woman, and we've become very close friends. And it was, that situation was, I mean, even if she didn't have a boyfriend and all that, it would be it was just not on my mind. Sex was just not on my
Pat, come on. Really?
Like, we just did not have that kind of no one had that kind of material or with each other.
Come on, Pat. It's always on the mind.
And so it's just no. I mean,
Come on.
No, he says no. The man has integrity. Leave him alone.
He's very professional.
How much of compliance was improvised, Pat, from your end? Because it really feels improvisational.
what it is the calls are live. So everything that I'm on, every time I'm on the phone, is being filmed simultaneously when they're on the phone.
So you're not behind the camera delivering lines. You're in another room.
I did that when the phone broke, and it made me sick to my stomach because I was like looking at them. But yeah, no, I'm actually in another set downstairs, and they're upstairs.
Oh wow.
Phone live. So it has that, real immediacy to it and reality to it. But we did do things not so much with dialogue, sometimes with dialogue, but Craig would maybe say to them and not tell me, this time tell him no, tell him you're not going to do it. And then I would know, Craig and I did another film together. We're good friends. So he wanted me because he knew I would be a guy who could just roll with it to do whatever I had to do to convince them, and vice versa. He would tell me, be nice this time, be mean this time, and those things are all sort of mixed up in the editing so that I'm doing this, very basic tactic of you shout at someone and then you run in and you comfort them, it's I forget what it's called, but there's the sort of pain and pleasure response that works very well on sort of cult members and stuff, and that's sort of how he does his thing. But the dialogue is pretty much the way that it was written, but little things here and there and stuff is cut together in different ways that create a different effect. But yeah, it's really intense. You were asking a Thora Birch.
Oh my God, she kills me, man. A lot of people are hot for Scarlett, and I am too. But Thora in that film, and to this day, she was the one that got me really going.
It's amazing how many women, younger women I meet have that she's like their spirit animal. Like there's so many. I meet now, like all the time.
Yeah, Pat, looking young too. I mean, even in the Innkeepers, you're playing a character that's probably 10 years younger, right? Than you actually are.
I'm fortunately blessed with genetics from my parents with good skin and.
You're like the modern day Emilio Estevez.
Yeah, exactly.
You play like a high school kid when you're 40 years old.
Just kind of cool because it's just sort of starting to ramp up for me now, and the parts are coming. Like this, I just did another film with Sarah. Speaking of Sarah,
oh wow, really?
Yeah, it's premiering at South by Southwest. Cheap Thrills, it's called, and it's
sweet chemistry, Pat. Sweet chemistry with her. You and her, it's magic.
And I'll let a little cat out of the bag. I probably shouldn't, but all of that built up and not acted upon sexual chemistry from the Innkeepers gets acted upon in this one. So
hot and heavy, huh, Pat?
Yeah, straight, odd, hot and heavy way.
Oh man. Now you had to pop a bony during that moment, right? When you were making that?
I know guys always like say this and people think you're bullshitting, but like she really we became such good friends and she
Pat, come on.
No, like a sister, Tom, be respectful.
All right.
I'm not going to sit here and argue that she is not a beautiful woman, clearly.
Would you inhale her undergarments if you were offered her hamper?
No.
Okay, now we're clear. Because Dreama Walker's undies are put in that bag, and I thought that was going to be the next scene.
Yeah.
I thought
he was
going to see
he was
Pat
going
Healy.
shotgun, yeah.
Yeah, was going to pull out that bag and inhale her vapors on the sidelines, but that didn't happen.
You know what's interesting, and you guys can probably talk about this when you do your review, is I don't see any sexual component at all to my character in that film. I don't think there's any sexual motivation at all.
So you think it's purely power then?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I never ever considered that. What's interesting is that you're seeing the nudity in the sexual act. I'm not. And what was really important, and this speaks to like what we were talking about before in terms of how to play the part. You don't play the themes of the movie. You play the part. So, Craig's main direction to me was always the stakes are very low. He's a jerky boy. He's making a call. He's not seeing any of this.
Right. But he is he's using sex as the power trip. So I mean, it's weird that it's not sexual.
No way to talk.
And it's humiliating sex,
without
really.
gender, but he views himself in my mind and Craig's mind as a prankster, and to him the worst thing that could happen is they hang up on him. He's not seeing it. I viewed it as, I think I've thought about this a lot more since we've done it than when we were filming it, as the guy that can tell me to go kill myself on Twitter. Would he ever say that to my face? No. And there is a growing number of people who do and say awful things. People kill themselves because people say things like that online. Now we see that, or people say things on the phone. I don't think that, I'm certainly not trying to defend the guy, but, I think that he thought of it in the abstract.
So you don't think that, let's just, and I don't want to spoil anything for our listeners. If Officer Daniels, if he were to be caught, he doesn't think he's doing anything unlawful.
No, he knows he's doing something unlawful because that's, it's illegal to, crank call. I'm just saying he thinks it's funny. I don't think he
thinks it's funny. Okay. All right.
What was going on, I don't think he would do it, and what's interesting is there was a guy, the actual case, there was a guy that was caught and brought to trial for it, and he was acquitted. So he, is presumably innocent, but the call stopped after that. They never happened again.
Because, on film, it's really hard to get, and this is what I enjoyed about it, was that it's hard to get, the gist of what the Officer Daniels character is, is thinking, whether he thinks it's funny, whether he, it was kind of like, it reminded me of Michael Pitt in Funny Games.
Yeah, sure. Absolutely.
I don't, it really did. And when I had that, it was the first time, I remember watching Funny Games for the first time when it came out. It's been 4 years since I've had that same kind of feeling while I was watching the movie, that uncertainty, about what's going on. It was just so bizarre bad. Let me ask you this real quick. And Dave, I know you probably want to ask him a quick question or two. David Gordon Green, how much of his presence was there during the film?
Well, David is just a very important person in my life and my career. We became friends. My brother met him at the Berlin Film Festival when George Washington premiered in 2000. We became good friends. We've always been friends first. I acted in Undertow with him. And then he recommended me to Craig for Great World of Sound, which is my first lead role. And David's behind almost every great thing that I've done since I met him. He recommended me for Jesse James, all these things. Mm-hmm. He wasn't on set for Compliance because he was cutting. He was there maybe a few days, but...
Well, Craig worked for him also on George Washington and Undertow.
They all went to school together at North Carolina School for the Arts. David, Danny McBride, right. Jody Bell, Craig... Jeff Nichols, I think, went there too. A lot of these guys. So they all work on each other's films, and it's a great bunch of people. You always work together, and he was cutting The Sitter, I think, at the time, so he wasn't on the set. But his presence is very strongly felt, and he has a lot to say, during post-production and all those things. But make no mistake, Craig is, really a mastermind. I think when we see this decade end, we're gonna see Craig as being one of those Paul Thomas Anderson like figures. He really is a remarkable guy in so many ways. And
I think he has something, and I could just see. Compliance is just like an hour, 25 minutes long, but you could just see those little seeds. When the restaurant manager goes out to her car to drop that bag off, and that violin music is playing, and
that's amazing.
Yeah, it is, man.
Amazing.
And I was so drawn into it. So you see, he's gonna grow and he's gonna get better, but you see these little seeds planted from this dude. That's very impressive shit. It's very, very impressive. We're talking with Pat Healy, the star of Compliance. Hey, listen, we're gonna cut Pat soon in just a couple minutes. Dave, you got a question or two for Pat?
You know, Pat. First of all, I just gotta say, 6 Feet Under, man. My favorite TV series, probably of all time. It's that and Twin Peaks, really. So,
Yeah.
fantastic show. But what I wanted to ask you about, I'm a writer. I'm interested in your work on In Treatment
Hmm.
because that's another show that I just have a tremendous amount of respect for.
Yeah, me too.
Uh, it's an amazing show, and just I mean, Gabriel Byrne is fantastic in it, and I think the way that show draws you in and keeps you in sort of rapt attention with these people and what they're going through is absolutely amazing. So maybe tell me a bit about the episodes of that show that you wrote.
Well, I was a big fan of the show. I saw it in the first season on HBO. Uh, I'm a longtime psychoanalysis patient, so it's a very important part of my life. So the show really had a great impact on me, and it just happened that my career as a screenwriter started to take off shortly before that. I had written a script, I adapted a novel called Strange Skies, and I met with the TV agent at my agency at the time, who just happened to represent Warren Light, who had just become the showrunner on In Treatment. I mentioned I liked the show. He gave him Strange Skies, the script. I met with Warren, and he hired me, and I went to New York and worked with the group of people. Each writer is assigned a different patient. So if you don't watch the show, it's 5 days a week, a different patient every day, therapist, and it's just a therapy session, a conversation between two people. Gabriel Byrne, one of his patients. So we all get together and talk about what the season is going to be, and then each person kind of goes off and writes their arc. And I had the great pleasure of writing for John Mahoney, who was someone that I met at the beginning of my career at Steppenwolf, and I wasn't around for production, unfortunately, because I live in LA, and it was difficult for me to stay in New York. But it's a very fulfilling experience to be in a writer's room, because I write alone, and that can be very um, you know lonely and
Yeah.
monotonous and difficult, and drinking happens. But working with a group of people, especially great writers like that, was really fulfilling. And I was telling a story the other day about there was the character that John Mahoney played. Had decided had a sibling who had died when he was young, and so that was a big part of why he was the way he was. And I was reading this book at the time called Bush on the Couch. I can't remember the author's name, but it was a psychoanalysis of George W. Bush while he was president. And there was a part of the book that really stood out to me, where George W. Bush had a younger sibling, an infant sister, I believe, who died when he was like a little kid, like 3 or 4 or 5 years old, and it was very traumatizing for him. And what was one of the really traumatizing things was that his mother's hair went white like overnight, like right away, from the stress from the situation, and how that kind of horrified him. And I mentioned that, and it got written into the script. I wrote it into the script, and I believe it made it to the show. And I thought, wow, this is like the perfect convergence of like all of my interests: uh, movies, television, acting, writing, politics, um, psychoanalysis, my therapy, all these things coming together to make this piece of art. And then when the show aired, I remember I watched it, and I had forgotten that the mother's hair that turned white was auburn, which is the color of my mother's hair. So I had unconsciously in there. So that sense of that, this everything we do is as artists is autobiography in some way, is very like special to me. It's sort of sacred. I really revere what I do and the people that do it well, just like you guys do. And so if I didn't, I would really do something else quick, because the business is not, the greatest, as you well know. Um,
Yeah.
I have such reverence for not myself, but for what I do, for what the the craft that people do, and the artists and the art they create, and movies and television and writing and acting are still magical, special things for me, and In Treatment is kind of really just an exemplary, thing, that a version of all of those things. It is the very best of kind of writing and two actors, acting together, and psychology and emotion behind all of this. So it's just a great honor and a pleasure to be a part of, even a little part of that thing.
We're talking with Pat Healy from Compliance. Dave, do you have anything else? Because we're going to cut Pat loose in just a minute.
No, I'm good. I know Pat's probably got to go. He's got things to do, but I just congratulations again on your work within treatment and your work in general. It's fantastic.
Thanks a lot, guys. Yeah, I have the two Universal Soldiers, the last two sequels that I haven't seen yet. I'm going to watch those, so I got to go do that.
There you go. There you go.
What?
Are you a big Jean-Claude Van Damme fan, Pat?
Like that, I am. Yeah, I like.
Did you see a movie called JCVD?
Yeah, that movie's great.
It is.
Love
It's really
movie.
good, man.
How great is that scene where he just breaks down and talks to the camera?
Yes. Talk about In Treatment.
Almost like one of the. Yeah, thanks. I really enjoyed talking to you guys. I'm sorry. Did you hear the helicopters at the end of this? Towards the end here?
Yeah, it's like
I'm surrounded by. I'm in LA, so I have helicopters.
No, that's all right.
Yeah.
It's like the scene toward the end of Boys in the Hood with Cuba Gooding Jr.
I was thinking it was more like the beginning of Apocalypse Now, but that's.
There you go.
Either way. Hey, Pat, thanks a lot for coming on the Cutting Room Movie Podcast and talking with us. It's been an absolute treat. We're going to get to reviewing Compliance. Hey, man, simply, thank you for coming on tonight.
Thanks, guys. Pleasure talking to you.